So, you know that almost universal feeling you get when you walk into a typical high-end networking event?
Oh, yeah. The glossy name tags.
Right. You grab the name tag, you step into this huge ballroom, you scan the room, and there's just this creeping sensation of like total emptiness.
Yeah, it's a very specific kind of drain on your energy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like everyone is there wearing the bespoke suits, holding
hmm
the lukewarm drinks, trading heavy cardstock business cards, but nothing of actual substance is taking place. It feels hollow, exhausting even.
It really is. It's almost like you're watching a pantomime of productivity. Yeah. Like the ritual of gathering is there, but it's been completely stripped of its original utility.
Yeah, and we've all been in those rooms, but what if those fancy clubs, those exclusive executive seminars, aren't just mildly annoying? What if that feeling of hollowness you experience is actually a symptom of a massive systemic failure?
That is the big question for today.
It is, because today we're doing a deep dive into a really fascinating, heavily debated lecture given in Ulsan, South Korea. This was back in August of 2025. And this lecture, it looks right at the hidden stagnation of elite social networking groups. And it offers this radical, deeply philosophical proposal to completely revolutionize how capable people gather.
And before we get too far in, we really need to establish some clear framing for you listening, because this lecture pulls absolutely no punches.
No, it does not.
It is highly critical of established, beloved global organizations. It specifically calls out groups like the Lions Club and the Rotary Club, along with modern university executive academies.
Yeah, it goes right for the heavy hitters.
It does. And furthermore, it directly ties the stagnation of these groups to a very sensitive, tragic issue, which is South Korea's national suicide crisis.
Which is heavy.
Very heavy. So our goal today is not to endorse these harsh critiques or, to take a political stance on these organizations. Our mission is simply to impartially unpack the fascinating, provocative philosophical arguments that the speaker in Ulsan is making.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand the radical solution proposed later in the lecture, we first have to look at the exact mechanical problem with today's social and economic elite.
Right. The root of the issue.
Yeah. The speaker uses a specific, weighty phrase to define these people. He calls it their economic mass.
The economic mass.
Right. We're talking about highly capable individuals, people who have immense resources, influence, elite education, decades of life experience. But what happens when they actually get together?
According to the lecture, not much.
Exactly. According to the text, they spend their time figured out, like who wants to go play golf? Or they're organizing luxury cruises around the world.
Or trying to force awkward, self-serving business deals that, like, be honest, rarely even materialize.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is that term economic mass, because it's really the engine of this entire argument.
How so?
Well, the speaker isn't just talking about their bank accounts.
Right.
Economic mass represents the sheer caloric and societal energy that has been poured into these individuals.
Oh, interesting. Like the infrastructure.
Yes, exactly. Think about the infrastructure, the education systems, the labor of thousands of ordinary workers that supported these executives as they climbed the ladder. They have absorbed immense societal investment.
So they owe a debt, essentially.
Right. But instead of deploying that mass, they are placed in what the speaker calls the warehouse.
The warehouse. Okay.
Yeah. Imagine a literal physical storage facility. But instead of holding surplus inventory or, old furniture, it is hoarding human potential.
Wow.
These executives and leaders are scooped up by elite clubs and academies and then basically stored away on a shelves. And the lecture notes, this warehousing has been happening for 10 to 15 years in South Korea.
Just sitting there.
Just sitting. Hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of highly capable people are physically gathered, paying massive dues. But socially, they are generating zero public value.
I mean, I am genuinely struggling with this critique, though. I have to push back here.
Okay, go for it.
Isn't networking a completely valid, necessary business tool? Like, people join these organizations to build their companies, to stimulate the local economy, to find vendors. It feels incredibly harsh to say they're doing absolutely nothing.
I get that. That is the natural instinct, right? To defend the networking as just a normal byproduct of capitalism.
Right.
But let me offer an analogy to explain the speaker's frustration. Imagine buying a state-of-the-art, multi-million-dollar supercomputer.
Okay.
The hardware is incredible. The processing power could sequence the human genome. It could solve complex climate models. But instead, you plug it in, boot it up, and exclusively use it to play solitaire.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see. So the hardware is functioning perfectly, but the application is a total waste of the machine's true capacity.
Precisely. The underlying philosophy here is that these individuals didn't generate their economic mass in a vacuum. Because they consume so much of society's energy to reach their heights, they hold a latent obligation to return a proportional output.
That makes sense.
But because the system never taught them how to use their immense capabilities for the public good, the societal engine is burning massive amounts of fuel while the car remains in park.
Which is something for you listening right now to really evaluate in your own life. Whenever you feel unfulfilled or bored in a professional group, it's highly likely because the mass of the group's collective talent drastically outweighs the actual purpose it's serving.
You are feeling the friction of the warehouse.
Yes. But here's where it gets really interesting. If these groups are currently just aimless country clubs without the actual golf course, how did they even get to this point?
Right, because they didn't start that way.
No, because if you look at the history the lecture lays out, it wasn't always just about handing out business cards and planning Baltic Sea cruises.
No, the historical context completely changes the framing here. When global organizations like the Lions Club and Rotary Club first entered South Korea, this was in the post-war era, they didn't come empty-handed.
Right, they brought real causes.
Massive world-changing causes. We're talking about highly coordinated international initiatives to eradicate polio globally, or massive campaigns to fight typhoid. They brought literal life-or-death stakes.
And South Koreans didn't just passively accept these groups either, they mobilized.
They did?
The lecture describes how they poured immense, almost unprecedented energy into these causes. They were hosting massive events in Seoul, gathering huge crowds, coordinating vast amounts of resources. They learned the actual logistics of mass mobilization.
And that's the key mechanism right there. The lecture argues that the entire point of importing these Western organizational structures, the donation culture, the weekly meetings, the charter rules, it was purely educational.
So it was a practice run.
Exactly. It was a societal study in how to gather people for a noble cause. The underlying goal was always to master the logistics of mobilization and then eventually, organically, create a uniquely Korean global agenda.
A new mission.
Right, a mission born from their own culture to export back out to the world.
It's like learning to ride a bike with training wheels. The foreign organizations, the imported structures, those were the training wheels.
That's a great way to put it.
They taught the mechanics of gathering, of pulling resources together, of balancing the bike. But we kept the training wheels on forever.
Yep.
We kept the foreign brand names, but we totally forgot we were supposed to eventually take the wheels off and build our own bike. We never took that next evolutionary step.
We just kept riding the starter bike. And because that step was never taken, the speaker is remarkably blunt about the current state of affairs.
Yeah, he doesn't hold back.
Not at all. The lecture argues that members are currently just spinning in circles within Rotary or loitering in the Lions Club.
Loitering, ouch.
Right. They're sitting around waiting for a foreign headquarters to hand them their next mandate. They're coasting on borrowed blueprints, completely avoiding the hard intellectual labor of defining their own generational purpose.
Spinning in circles and loitering. For people who consider themselves the absolute elite of society, those are devastating descriptions.
Truly devastating.
Which brings us to a really dark, urgent pivot in this deep dive.
Yeah.
Because if the capacity to organize is there, and if the old imported causes like polio and typhoid have largely been addressed, what is the massive crisis right in front of them that these warehoused elites are completely ignoring?
And it is a massive crisis.
It is. South Korea has been #1 globally in suicide rates for nearly 20 years.
It is a grim, relentless statistic.
Yeah.
The lecture points out that this tragedy began essentially right after the start of the new millennium.
But it hasn't stopped.
No. With only brief, negligible dips where they might drop to second place momentarily, it has been a tragic constant for 2 decades.
The speaker in Ulsan uses this incredibly dark, sarcastic humor to force the audience to face this reality, and it hits incredibly hard.
It really does. It's jarring.
Yeah, they ask the crowd, are we trying to win an Olympic medal for suicide? Or are we waiting for an old-school filial piety award? You know, referencing those historical awards that ancient kings used to give out to citizens who did things like clean their sick parents' bedpans for 30 years straight.
Right.
It's a shocking, almost offensive way to frame it, but it jolts you awake.
Because it's designed to shatter the complacency of the warehouse. But notice the friction it creates.
I feel that friction. Again, I find myself wanting to push back on the speaker's logic here.
Okay, what's the pushback?
Well, in a highly connected modern world, shouldn't these elite wealthy groups be focusing on borderless global issues, things like climate change or global poverty? Why demand they focus strictly inward on a domestic mental health and societal crisis when they have the resources to look outward?
That's a fair question.
Right. Furthermore, how can you blame a local business owner who joined a charity club for a national suicide crisis? That feels like an absurd leap in logic.
It feels like a leap until you understand the specific cultural operating system the speaker is invoking. The lecture demands they stop pretending to save the world while their own neighbors are dying at unprecedented rates.
Okay, so it's about priorities.
Yes, and the core philosophy here relies on the concept of Hongik Ingen.
Hongik Ingen. I know we see that translated broadly as benefiting humanity, but how does that actually operate as a mechanism here?
It is not just a dictionary definition. It is a foundational mandate for Korean leadership. Hongik Ingen operates on the principle that true enlightenment and capability must inherently flow outward to elevate the community.
So it's an obligation.
Absolutely. The speaker describes these highly educated, resourced elites as descendants of heaven.
Descendants of heaven.
Right. And that isn't about divine right. It's about acknowledging the immense privilege of their economic mass.
Ah, okay, that makes sense.
The argument is that for a nation of such exceptionally high intellect to simply ignore a 20-year domestic crisis, it's a profound moral abdication. You cannot export a cure if your own house is burning to the ground.
Wow.
The lecture literally warns that hoarding this mass while ignoring the burning house invites heaven's punishment.
Okay, so if we take all of this, the wasted potential of the supercomputer playing solitaire, the training wheels we never took off, and the burning house of the suicide crisis, how does the lecture actually propose we fix this?
That's the million-dollar question.
What is the operational plan to get the car out of park?
Well, the lecture proposes a radical pivot. It calls for the creation of a new structure called the Social Parents Club, or Sahobi Bumo Club in the original text.
Social Parents Club.
Right. And every mechanical aspect of this club is explicitly designed to dismantle the warehouse effect.
The mechanics are what fascinated me the most, because to get into those fancy executive academies, you're usually dropping thousands of dollars to prove your exclusivity, right?
Exactly. It's a status symbol.
But the Social Parents Club. The dues are purely symbolic. The lecture specifies exactly 30,000 won. That's roughly like 20 to 25 US dollars.
And let's look at why that specific number matters. By setting the dues at the cost of a couple of cups of coffee, you instantly remove wealth as the filtering mechanism.
Right. It's not a pay-to-play system anymore.
Exactly. The club isn't about proving you have money. It democratizes the intent. The only barrier to entry is your absolute commitment to the single, uncompromising agenda of the club.
And there is no golf. There is no loitering. There is no waiting for a mandate from an overseas headquarters. The sole monumental agenda is zero suicide in South Korea.
Notice the deliberate precision of that terminology. Not suicide reduction, not suicide prevention, zero suicide.
So what does this all mean mechanically? The speaker makes a brilliant distinction between prevention and resolution.
Which is crucial.
Think about it like this. Prevention is like running around your living room with a bunch of buckets, frantically trying to catch water dripping from a leaky roof.
Okay, I can picture that.
The lecture notes that if you manage to stop 2 people from dying today with preventative measures, 20 more will appear tomorrow. Why? Because the underlying conditions, the broken roof, haven't changed at all. You're just endlessly managing the symptoms of a sick society.
Which is an exhausting, ultimately losing battle.
Right.
Resolution, on the other hand, is getting a ladder, climbing up, and fixing the structural integrity of the roof itself so the water stops coming in altogether.
But how does a club actually fix the roof? How does a CEO or an influential academic use their economic mass to achieve zero suicide?
By fundamentally changing their relationship to the vulnerable. A social parent isn't just a donor writing a check to a mental health charity.
It's more active than that.
Much more active. They are deploying their network, their policy influence, their hiring practices, and their corporate cultures to literally parent the society.
Wow.
If an elite business owner views the youth of their city not as disposable labor, but as societal children they are directly responsible for, they change how they run their businesses.
Right. The whole paradigm shifts.
Exactly. They destigmatize mental health in their ranks. They leverage their political influence to change economic pressures. They weaponize their networking power for actual human survival.
They are finally running the supercomputer at full capacity.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the speaker posits a fascinating domino effect.
What happens next?
Well, once South Korea achieves zero suicide using this elite mobilization method, it becomes an unprecedented global achievement. The world will naturally take notice. Other nations suffering from similar modern crises will study and copy the Korean model.
So the domestic club organically evolves into the global social parents.
Yes.
They fulfill that original dormant destiny of Homjik Ingan, contributing to human co-prosperity. They finally build their own bike, master riding it, and then export that knowledge, teaching the rest of the world how to ride.
It is a complete inversion of the current dynamic.
Yeah.
Instead of importing solutions, they become the global headquarters for a new era of societal healing.
What a profound journey. We went from highly capable executives stuck in a stagnant warehouse debating cruise itineraries to a profound philosophical call to arms for them to cure a national tragedy by becoming social parents.
It's a massive shift in perspective.
It really is. And as we wrap up this deep dive, we want you to really reflect on your own circles. Look at your skills, your network, your resources. Are the groups you belong to currently sitting in a warehouse? Are you playing solitaire with your own potential?
And here is something further to chew on, a natural extension of everything we've discussed today.
Okay, let's hear it.
The lecture focuses heavily on the human potential being wasted right now. But what happens in 5 or 10 years when artificial intelligence is doing the heavy lifting in our global economy?
Oh, that's a terrifying thought.
Right. If our elites are already aimlessly warehoused today, are we all about to be warehoused by automation? And if so, won't we all fundamentally need to become social parents to one another just to maintain our societal sanity and purpose?
Man, that completely changes how you look at the future of networking. The next time you walk into one of those ballrooms and feel that creeping sense of hollowness, you have to ask yourself, are you just going to be another ghost in a suit playing the game, or are you going to demand a real purpose?
Choose the purpose.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the structures around you. Make sure you aren't just catching drips when you could be fixing the roof, and we will see you next time.